Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslima. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about redirection. Redirection, and also what some of the signs of being redirected could be. So this is definitely a topic that I have spoken about before in passing, sort of acknowledged, let's put it that way, that I have acknowledged in previous episodes before about how you may have an idea of the thing that you want, but on your way to trying to achieve the thing, asking Allah for it and taking action and doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, you might find that you're being redirected ever so slightly. That the thing that you want, the specific thing that you want, the way that you imagine it or expect it to come to you might not be the correct way for it to come, or might not be the correct way for you to receive it. And so there may be some redirection happening from Allah's perspective that you kind of have to intuitively know and trust and follow. And so this is actually, just to let you know as well, a suggestion from one of you listeners. So thank you so much. And before I go into depth with this episode, I just want to say that if you're sitting out there and you're thinking, hey, I'd really like an episode on this subject or on that subject, do as this listener did and reach out to me over on Instagram, send me a private message there and just say, hey, listen, I think this would be a really cool episode. If you could talk into that or whatever, then, if I have enough information from that, or if I know what you mean, I'll definitely 100% go in and just get that done. I might ask follow-up questions, whatever. But generally speaking, I love to hear from you. And I love it when you suggest episodes, topics as well, because it really shows me what it is that you're interested in hearing more about. And that really helps me produce more content for you that you actually want and crave and need. So thank you to this one listener. I didn't actually ask if I'm allowed to say your name, so I'm not going to. But thank you for this episode suggestion. Okay, so let's get into the actual topic. So redirection. So as I've mentioned already in this episode or many times in the past, that sometimes on our journey to attain the thing that we are trying to manifest in this dunya, we might be redirected. And there's something about the redirection that can sometimes get people a little bit worried. So the worry around redirection is mainly that we don't get the thing that we think is best for us. That our ego kind of comes in the way and is like, no, but I really want it to be this thing. I really want it to be this person. I really want it to be this, that, and the other. And it has to come from this direction. It has to look like this. It has to taste this way and smell this way. And that's all very nice and well. I can understand this. The ego is a very powerful drive for a lot of us. But the truth is that our ego doesn't always know best. It operates from a very limited perspective. And so sometimes our ego, well, not sometimes, but most of the time, if not all the time, our ego actually fails to see the bigger picture of everything, meaning that the ego is short-sighted. And so once we start on our journey to actually achieve the things that we set out for ourselves to want to achieve, it can be very difficult for us to run it off ego all the way, because again, our ego can't think that far in advance and what's good for us 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even 1 year from now. Let's be so real. It doesn't even have to be several years, a month from now. And that is why we can't operate from the place of the ego. It is there for a reason, and it definitely has some benefits. I feel like I've made an episode on this. I'm going to have to go back into my podcast lists or episode lists and figure out if I've done an episode on that before. And if I haven't, then I'll definitely do one in the future, because I think it's very important to understand that as well. But it is not the place that we should be operating from, like when we're doing things like law of attraction work or trying to attract certain things into our lives, because again, as I said, it is very short-sighted. It doesn't know the future. We don't know the future. The ego certainly doesn't know the future, and it's very limited in its perspective. So when we are going into attaining our goals and trying to manifest something in this dunya through the law of attraction from an Islamic perspective, we very much have to set aside the ego. And that can be very difficult, because it is the main drive for all of us. Again, it's very psychology based. And again, I'm not going to go into the details here. If I haven't done an episode on this before, then I'll do that in the future. But And that's coming from somebody who's not like a psychologist or anything like that, by the way. Like, I haven't studied psychology other than what, you do in school, whatever. But that's just from like own research and whatever. But we are, all of us, very much ego driven. This is what drives us in like everyday life to survive, I was going to say thrive, but it's actually not. The ego is mainly just worried about surviving. It actually doesn't want to take us into the thriving necessarily, because thriving means taking chances, doing things that we're not used to doing, having faith, stuff like that. And the ego doesn't necessarily like to operate from those places because it can feel kind of alien, it can feel strange, it can feel uncertain and things like that. So when we do law of attraction from an Islamic perspective, we have to step away from the ego, and we have to step into what mainstream spiritual teachers or law of attraction teachers call the higher self. Okay, the higher self. Now, this is not basically a thing that is a wrong thing to say. It's just, I just want to make sure that we also understand it from an Islamic perspective. There are different levels of the self, of the nafs. In Islam, it's nafs, or in Arabic it's called nafs, but like in Islam they speak about it also as nafs. So there are several levels to the nafs. I believe it is 7 levels of the nafs, and the highest level of nafs is, I would argue, probably, without knowing this, of course, but seeing how the world operates today and some of the limitations that we operate under, is kind of like maybe where the prophets kind of would fall into, where your whole life is literally just Allah, for the sake of Allah. Everything is for the sake of Allah, and your life, everything about you is for the sake of Allah. And even just saying it this way doesn't even explain it fully. Again, I could also probably make an episode on that. Wow, should I? Let me know. Okay, but the point is, there are several levels of nafs, and the lowest level of nafs is the one that is literally just driven by like our impulses. Like, I think it's the id. Oh, I can't remember. I'm going to have to look into that, because I wasn't actually planning on going that much into detail for this episode. But it's driven by the lowest level of the nafs, and the part of us that basically just lets our desires roam free. That could be people who, have no sexual like can't control their sexual impulses, their aggressive impulses. That's kind of basically like the high road to hell kind of thing, where you're just driven by, I want this, I want it now, I can't explain it, I don't care about the future, so I'm going to do it. Okay. And then it goes up to that point of the 7th level of nafs, that again, I would argue probably the prophets would be in, where it's literally everything about them is for Allah. And we're kind of usually, most of us, somewhere in the middle, kind of more towards the lower end than the higher end still, quite a lot of us. Yeah, I know. Again, I'll definitely do an episode on this, because I think it's so fascinating. And the more you know about this, the more you can kind of also understand what to strive towards in this dunya of awareness, of submission to Allah and things like this, and like what the next steps for you would be, rather than aiming for the highest one off the bat. Just like, let me just take it one step at a time. So as going back to what I was saying, is that in mainstream we call it the higher self, right? So like, we're saying like, oh, I'm going to operate from the higher self, like, or whatever they call it. Like, is it called higher self? I'm pretty sure that's what they call it. Let me just Google that right now, because now I'm getting like super yeah, it is called higher self. I'm not even going to, you know what? I'm not even going to try and Google it and stuff. I'm just higher self. Just trust me on this, girls, okay? Don't Google it. Just trust me, okay? Trust me, bro. So from the level of higher self, we're setting aside our ego, and instead of just focusing on what would be comfortable now, what would I like now, what would keep me safe now, we are taking a step away from that and looking as much as we can from a sense of intuition, of calling, of inspiration from Allah, from tawakkul, having faith and trust in Allah. And we're making plans and doing things from that perspective. So when we go into things and we start taking that action, it is so important that we continuously come back to that level of higher self, or that position of higher self, because there may be a part in that journey where we will find ourselves getting signs or signals that could be for us to be redirected. That either we had, because I've said this again, time and again, when Allah inspires us with something, He gives us but a fraction of the whole piece, a masterpiece. So like there's a whole painting, it's the Mona Lisa, and all we've got was one single lick of paint on a blank canvas. That's what we see. And then we have to think about, oh, what is this going to look like in the end? We have no clue, but we've seen that one, lick of paint on the canvas, and we think we know the whole full image. And we're looking at a drawing of SpongeBob, meanwhile, or like we're imagining a painting of SpongeBob, and Allah has got the painting of the Mona Lisa, in His mind for how it's going to end up looking. That's kind of the way that our expectations come into play. So when we are moving towards the goal, the desire, the thing that we're trying to manifest, it is so important for us to be able to step back and understand that the inspiration was not the full image. So at any moment, if we have got the idea of the final image wrong, we are not supposed to necessarily follow on that expectation to the last breath. There has to be room for us to let go of our expectations and allow Allah's will to come in and redirect and do what needs to be done. And this is where some of us can get very stubborn. I'm going to call it that, stubborn. We can get very set on our own expectations and the idea of what we think is best for us. So while we're standing there trying to finish this painting that Allah has inspired us to do, we'll reach for that neon yellow because we're thinking, I'm going to draw SpongeBob, right? I'm going to keep coming back to that metaphor. I don't know. I just like it. And in reality, I don't know if there's any neon yellow on the Mona Lisa painting, but I should suspect there isn't. Allah's going to be like, whoa, put that neon yellow color back down. You don't need that neon yellow color. And if we are not ready to step back and receive the redirection, we can go in and try and force paint on that canvas with a neon yellow. And we might be able to paint SpongeBob, but it's not going to look good. It's not going to feel good. It's going to be difficult. The lines are not going to be lining. SpongeBob looks a little bit weird. The painting is never really finished. There's a lot of, it feels icky. There's a lot of resistance. The paint is too expensive. Again, tons of metaphors for why it's just not working. And that is because at some point or another, Allah tried to direct you away from it. So He could have, for instance, now I'm speaking in metaphors again here because I do love to make up my own metaphors. You know me. You could be like, I'm going to go out and buy that neon yellow paint, and the prices have gone up, so you can't afford it. And that's Allah saying, it's not for you. It's not for you. That's not the paint. Look at different colors. Look at different colors. And you insist. So you don't even look at the other colors. You don't think about, okay, maybe it's not SpongeBob that I should be painting, but I should still paint a picture. Maybe SpongeBob and the Mona Lisa is a little bit too far apart from each other, but the point is still the same. But you can become stubborn here and force yourself to be like, I am not going to buy a single paint color until I can buy that SpongeBob yellow. And so you're going to start selling things. You're going to take out loans with high interests. You're going to budget. You might even overdraft your card. So you bought the thing and now you've got debt or some stress financially because you kind of went too hard on the budget for the paint, but you insist, you're so stubborn, you insist upon this. So on the back end of that decision, a lot of stress is happening. A lot of stress. You've put yourself in a position that is no longer comfortable, where it's ease and flow. And ease and flow, again, oh my God, today the episode suggestions in my head are just like, yeah, maybe we should talk about that. Maybe we should talk about that. It's my ADHD brain. It's really ADHDing these days. Okay, shut up, Zara. Get back onto the subject. So on the back end of things, there's not ease and flow. There's resistance, there's stress, there's fear, hesitation, anxiety. Things are falling apart, things that shouldn't be falling apart. And as a result, you become less of a good Muslim and more of a Muslim that's full of hesitation, fear, doubt, anxiety, stress. It's making you miss your prayers. It's making you question everything. It's making you feel resentful towards Allah. The people are, oh my goodness. These dogs. 1 second, darlings. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're back again. Yes, so it can basically put you in a position where everything in your life feels worse. But in reality, when you're looking at it, you're like, no, but look, it's the thing, it's the dream, it's the a picture of SpongeBob. It's a bit crooked and the colors are a little bit off, and I'm in debt because I've had to pay for the extremely expensive paint colors, but it's the dream. Why is it not aligning? And you're fighting for it. The thing is, like, you're fighting for it in a really uncomfortable way. You're not fighting for it in that you get up and you do the thing on days when it feels uncomfortable. You're fighting for it in a way where it's like, it feels like it's costing you your life, your deen, your good relationship, your salahs, all of these things. This is a real big sign that, hey, you probably missed a point of redirection at some point or another. There was probably a point where Allah tried to kind of redirect you, but you insisted upon your own expectation. And as a result, you're seeing the lack of benefits and lack of blessings there is in your version of what the dream looked like, your expectations of it. And that is not from Allah. That is from you, because you insisted upon it when Allah tried to redirect you. And had you followed the redirection, you would have gone towards that image of the Mona Lisa rather than SpongeBob. Okay, I'm going to stop with this metaphor now. Am I? I don't know. We'll see. I can't predict the future. So what can a sign of redirection look like? Because it's very important for us to understand as well the difference between being redirected versus a lesson to overcome, so to speak, or like a bump in the road for Allah to test us on the way. So there are tests on the way that we know we can overcome, and the cost of overcoming it, while you might be annoyed or frustrated by it, is not going to cost you anything necessarily. It's not going to make you a worse person. It's not going to put you in a position where you're worse off or where your deen is worse off. The lesson, the test and that obstacle in that test will, if anything, make you more aware of something within that situation, strengthen your deen and trust and faith in Allah. It may make you aware of something that you need to understand now in order for you to do the thing. Oh, sorry, my little notification thing went off there. May make you aware of something that'll be imperative for you going forward in the thing that you're trying to manifest. And again, as I said, it's not that it's not annoying or frustrating because you're like, I just want the blessing already. Like, yeah, Allah, just give me the blessing. I don't want to learn anymore. But it's still just an obstacle that, to a large degree, can be overcome relatively easily. And I say relatively easily because it really depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve, and it depends on the size of the thing. Usually the smaller the thing, the smaller the test. But like if you're trying to completely 180 your life, then there might be bigger tests, like certain people coming in and out of your life, jobs coming or going that you have to move, things like that. And they can be a little bit more difficult. But ultimately, there will always, when you're connecting back to that higher self position, be a clear intuitive calling or feeling towards one thing, and that'll be the right thing. And so you'll know that that is an obstacle. A redirection, and the sign of a redirection, is a hard stop. It's a hard stop, one way or another, where it feels like the pay or the cost of you having to overcome that will put you at a really great disadvantage one way or another. So a real disadvantage could be, as I said earlier, like it could cost you your relationship with Allah. You might start resenting Allah because the true desire of the dream was to work less, so you had more time with your family, but the direction that you're taking would cost you your time with your family, and you'd have to work harder and more, and not just like for a short period of time, but like forever and a day. That could be sort of like a cost of it, and so it'll cost you your relationship with Allah, because you start resenting Allah. It's like, you're giving me my dream, but it doesn't look the way that I wanted it, or again, like you wanted to, I'm going to come back to the example, you wanted to paint a masterpiece and instead you're looking at a picture of SpongeBob. And okay, listen, we can sit here and argue whether or not SpongeBob is a masterpiece, but for the sake of this, for the sake of my sanity right now, let's just not go there right now. So, the cost of not taking the redirection and insisting upon your expectation would cost you too much, whereas the redirection would actually cost you less but still get you the thing that you want, but it might look different. So what could be a sign? A sign could be you let's take an example here. You want to buy a house, and you found a house and you thought, wow, this is the perfect house. I want to buy this house. And at first it's affordable. So you're like, wow, it's within the price range and whatever, because Allah wants you to buy a house. But he doesn't have this house in mind, but you think it's this house, okay? So as you're coming in and you're getting the house checked up and whatever, they're like, oh, actually, there's like a problem with the piping. So actually the house is going to cost you a little bit extra. And at first you're like, oh, okay, I didn't really expect that kind of cost. But I can maybe get the bank to agree to sign off a little bit more. It's going to cost me a little bit more to pay that like in time. Like, so every month it's going to cost me a little bit more. So my budget's a little bit tighter going forward, but I can make it happen because you're not listening, right? You're not listening to the sign. So the second sign comes in, not far thereafter. Oh, actually, this was also, it's got some mold in the basement, black mold, and it's actually a health hazard. And so you actually have to do something about it. So that's an extra cost, okay? And again, it's not an impossible cost, but it is a cost. And while you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can get the bank to sign this off as well, but it's going to put me now financially going forward to live in this house. It's going to put me in like I can't just thrive living here and just go on holiday on whatever I want and eat out like 5 times a week. I'll have to start really like following a budget. Like, this is how much I have and whatever. Okay, but you're like, okay, but I'm it's fine. It's whatever. I'm going to trust and whatever. And so you keep going forward. You're not reading the sign. You're not seeing the sign. Then a little bit later, another thing comes in. Well, actually, it was actually proof. It's just a stupid example here, but it's again another thing. A bunch of devil worshippers lived in the house, and they created some bad juju energy in the house. They were playing with demons. They were doing stuff, and also they murdered somebody there or whatever. Like, again, it's stupid things. I'm not saying that's stupid. Like, I'm just saying the example might be stupid, but the point is, it's not always necessarily a cost of the physical, like the financial thing. Sometimes it's a cost of your energetic being, your mindset. Okay, so that's why I'm kind of bringing this example in, where you're like, oh, okay, I believe that I come in with good energy, so my good energy might be able to offset whatever bad energy is there. If there are demons in the house or jinns or whatever that's like residing there, I suppose if I bring in an imam and we, read the Quran, we hang the Quran, bring a Quran in every room, blah, blah, blah. But like, ultimately, again, this is not necessarily of like, yeah, you can get through it. There are ways around it, but it's the cost of it might be more than what you agreed on. So all of a sudden now you have to start doing some sort of exorcisms on a weekly basis to keep the jinns at bay because somebody did something beforehand. Again, stupid example, just to put an example out there. And again, you're doing the thing where you're like, there's a sign, there's a reason, there's a sign coming in that's telling you, hold up. And it's not a question of, can I overcome this resistance that is being shown? It is, what is the cost of the resistance? Is it an easily fixable cost? And not just easily fixable now, future-wise, for me going into this future, is it still a cost that I will be willing to pay? Okay, it's not just again, this is not ego driven. So we're not just looking at the picture right here, right now. We're looking at from the higher self. What is going forward? How do I see my life with this thing? And if I have a bigger mortgage now because I've got a bigger loan with the bank and a bigger interest rate, and I continuously, I also have to buy furniture at some point. Maybe I want to go travel at some point. My kids need braces. I don't know. And then on top of that, the house is haunted with jinns, and it's got some bad energy that maybe makes me feel lethargic around praying or listening to the Quran in the background because the jinns constantly play on me and whatever. Do you see what I'm getting at here? So when you look at a sign of a redirection versus an obstacle to overcome, sort of like a learning curve, a test, a lesson along the way, it is, number one, it is assessing it, see what it is, and then looking at the cost of it going forward. what is the cost of it? Because you can overcome it, but on the other side, what is the cost of overcoming it? Is it, if it's a redirection, it is, I want to buy this house, the pipes have to be fixed. But actually, fixing the pipes gives the house a better value. And with the interest rate, the way that it works, I can actually offset it with something. I don't speak bank, by the way, or interest rates and stuff like that. But sometimes there's like things, whatever, and somehow it'll work out for the better so that on the other end, you've actually increased the value of the house. And also the way that the bank loan would work out, you've actually also secured yourself a specific deal, whatever, that would yield something really cool for you 5 years from now, whatever, right? Like, I don't speak bank, but something to that effect. Or I can actually take that loan from my parents, and so I wouldn't have interests on that loan, and it will be easier for me to pay that off because my mum and dad have the money, and I'd increase the value of the house. Do you see what I mean? So again, the cost of it is not as heavy as when it is a redirection. A redirection is, it's your mortgage is going to be more. There's going to be more budget on you on the other end. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be more interest from the bank. You're going to be stuck in debt. That is, by the way, also not halal anyway, but let us not talk about that. That's a conversation for other people for another time, because I understand the world that we live in today. But the point is that there's a very real differentiation. There's a real difference, Zara, while you're trying to up-level your speaking. That is stupid. There's a real difference between a test coming your way, because there's something you need to learn that sometimes, as I said, if it's a cost for a house, keep with this example, that the road could be to teach you that you don't always have to go to the bank. Your mum and dad might have the money, or a really good friend of yours, or you have the savings already, or if you do the whatever, that there's a different way to get that money, and it might actually work out better for you doing it that way. And that could be the test for you going forward, like, oh, it's actually working better for me if I look at other options first before I go in and create more debt and interest debt with a bank, for instance, versus a redirection is a full stop, hard stop. This is going to bring pain, suffering, hardship, stress, anxiety, fear, hesitation, resentment, anger, all of that stuff down the line. This is not sustainable. That's the word I think I'm looking for. A sign of redirection is what you're about to do, and the cost of it is not sustainable. It is not sustainable. Okay. And if we are operating from a place of ego when we're making these decisions, at any one of these signs, so two things can happen. Usually it'll be, there's a cost. So if it's a test, we'll be like, I'm too proud to take a loan with my mum and dad, so I'm going to forget the house. It wasn't for me anyway, because the ego's too scared to feel like it has to position itself where it's asking perhaps mum and dad for a loan. Does that sound stupid? Maybe it does, but it's the truth. So the ego will come in and be like, no, you can't ask your mum and dad for a loan, and the bank loan is too expensive, so I'm just not going to do anything because it feels, I don't feel safe doing this, or whatever. So that's where the ego, even in the in the test lesson resistance, comes in and is like, tries to divert you from just following through, because you have to do something that maybe you haven't done before and you're a little concerned about doing. And the ego, when it's redirection, actually goes the opposite direction and says, I've already made up my mind, and so I don't care about the cost. I need to get the thing that I now have decided is the thing. So the ego can really go two ways, right? And then so that you can push you in towards taking a bigger loan with the bank, because now you've spoken so much about this house and you've told your mum she can come and stay with you and whatever. And you've sent pictures back to the homeland for your family and whatever. And they're like, oh my God, Zara, you're really making something of yourself. I'll just use myself as an example here. I don't know why, like in that little sentence. But the point is, so like, you might feel like, oh, I've already kind of spoken about this so much, I need to follow through. And so the ego is like, the humiliation of saying, no, it didn't work out is too much, so I'm going to push through even if it's going to cost me too much. And as I said, on the other end, if it's a test, it could be that Allah is testing you, because he knows that you need to set aside your ego and sometimes sort of be like humble and be like, hi mum, dad, I actually really need this favor in order for this to happen. I can go to the bank, but I really would prefer not to, because it's going to put me in debt and whatever. and I know you have this savings. Would you be willing to work out something with me? So do you see? It's really interesting. Once you really get the hang of this, it's so interesting to figure out what's an obstacle and what's a redirection. Or yeah, like I say, obstacle. It is an obstacle because obstacles are literally, like if you're looking at an obstacle course, they're literally there meant for you to overcome them. An obstacle is not a stop. It is just a way around, or like get over it on the other side of it. And the redirection is a directly stop, go another way. Stop, go to the left. Stop, go to the right. Stop, turn around and go another way completely. And knowing the difference between the two is so valued, and it's so much easier when you operate from a sense of higher self, from a higher level of nafs, where there is that trust and faith in Allah. And the reason, again, as I said at the beginning, for this is because at that higher level of nafs, we operate from a place of tawakkul, meaning when we see a redirection, a hard stop, we don't question it. We might to begin with, because again, we're only human, but we're not going to cry snot over it forever and a day. We're not going to resent Allah for saying no to us to go that direction. We're going to say, thank you, alhamdulillah, you've stopped me from potentially going down a road that would have brought too much hardship my way. So alhamdulillah, and I'll happily follow the road that you have seen as better for me. And that is where that faith and trust in Allah really comes into play here. Okay, that is, I think, everything that I really wanted to say about redirection and the signs of redirection. I hope that helped answer some questions and clear some stuff up for you in terms of, for all of you, in terms of how to know when you're being redirected versus when it's an obstacle that you have to overcome, and how to start looking at the things, how to sort of assess it in order for you to go forward. But please remember, in all of these things, in every single one of these things, even if you push past a redirection and you still go, you dig a hole through that mountain because you refuse to go around that mountain, and you're like, I'm still going to go there. It's never too late to turn around and say, what? Yeah, Rob, I got too ahead of myself there. Let's figure out a way around it. Let me course correct. So you can always course correct, even if it's, you've already done the thing. So don't give up hope. There's always time. Allah will always guide the people who come to him asking for guidance. So don't forget to do that on your journey. All right, my darlings, I'm going to love you and leave this episode here. I'll see you in the next episode on Thursday, inshallah. But until then, please don't forget to live in love.